welcome to the Butterfly House. To returning viewers and new viewers alike, you're very welcome to sit and share some time with me as I ramble on about all the things. I have had castonitis like nobody's business. I can't begin to count. Honestly, I'm looking all around me and that's all the things. In some ways it's really nice to see, and in other ways it's a little bit overwhelming. I've had a couple of bad weeks and I realised that to keep the levelness in my life, the cure seems to be to cast on all the things. So that is what I've done. That's what I'm going to share. The format for today's episode will be led by whatever I pick up. So I hope that you will enjoy looking at many things. With this amount of stuff cast on, I'm bound to catch almost all of you with something that you like. Some of it will be a catch-up, some of it's new. I've got a new craft that I will introduce this time because I've cast on. That's not strictly true, it doesn't describe what I've done. However, because it's part of the cast-on-itis thing. But I'll talk about more fully that particular craft on another episode, but it will be brought in because it's part of the process of the last couple of weeks. So where to start? I'll start with a finished object because it's right on the top of the pile, simply because it kept falling over. I hope you will remember this shawl. It was the Polana shawl by Amber O'Brien. I cast it on, I think it was sort of at the beginning of the Tour de France period, and I kind of dipped in and out of it as I was spinning, which I haven't done any of, interestingly. And then I did masses of it on an 8-hour car journey that I had to take, and it's finished. Didn't quite get finished on that car journey because I ran out of yarn, and I wouldn't have run out of yarn if I hadn't chosen to do what I chose to do, which I'll just show you rather than yabber on about it, allude it to it mysteriously. I changed my cast off to the pattern. So this is the shawl. It's beautifully plump and soft, and I picked, I'm just going to sit slightly further back, I picked a cotton. Let me tell you the yarn so that you will understand why I've done what I've done. So there's obviously white, and this is the other colour, and it's the Bergère de France Sonora double knit. This colour is called Caverne 24414, just in case my pronunciation misleads you. Caverne. A very, very soft yarn. This is a 50-gram ball, and it gives me 115 metres. And the fibre content is 50% cotton and 50% acrylic. Without the acrylic, the softness of this, the garment would be blown out completely. So the acrylic keeps that at bay a little. I have all of that white left, and this would have been the same amount. However, I had to buy an extra ball of wool. I'll explain why. I had to buy an extra ball of wool. Just pick up this pattern I've not done before, because rather than just casting off, the pattern calls for you to pick up stitches all the way around so that you get the one colour and then cast off immediately. And because I knew that cotton has a tendency to go baggy and stretch, I opted instead to do an I-cord bind off, which of course ate up the yarn that I had left over, and I was about that far away from the end and I ran out of yarn. So my yarn chicken did not pay off and I had to buy another ball. But I originally bought I can't remember where I originally bought the yarn from Love Knitting, but they are extremely fast. If the stuff's in stock, it's here within 2 or 3 days sometimes. So I ordered this extra ball from Love Knitting, and it came before the end of the week, and I just cast off and that was done. The shawl, interestingly, took quite a while to dry. That would be the cotton content, of course. And I started drying it flat, so that the bulk of the moisture evaporated into the air whilst it was lying flat. But then I wanted to test more its durability. So then I hung it on my washing line on the top edge, which is the most stretchy, because I picked up 1 stitch per row. So there's a lot of cast off stitches there. And so it's quite stretchy. But the reason why I chose the I-cord bind off is that has a limited stretch, and after a point it doesn't go any further. So that will prevent overstretch, hopefully. So there we go. The I-cord was a mammoth task because I will have gone all the way around the top edge. So I started at a corner, it was the other one actually, and then I went across the top, I-cording all the way, doobie-doobie-doo. Here we go. Bearing in mind I've had to pick all these stitches up because they're not live stitches. And then all the way down the side. This is so interesting for you to look at. This was the only section of live stitches on the curved end, and I doubled them so that it would have there would be no puckering from the I-cord bind off. Again, because of the nature of the fabric, I possibly didn't need to bother with that. And then all the way down the other side, blah blah. The length of the shawl is huge. I found that middle point. Here's my metre, and this is not putting any stretch into it. That's 1 metre and a quarter, a third maybe. So that's nearly 3 metres across the top line. The depth of it is not too bad, not masses, reasonable. It's beautifully soft, and of course I can have that against my skin, no problem. It's because of its interesting shape on the front, I prefer to wear it around the back and then wear it across my shoulders. For me, this is a summer cosy up if it's got a bit chilly in the garden, or out and about or whatever. And I would very probably off-centre it and tie, or wear a nice chunky natural wooden brooch. So finished, done. 8-hour car drive, got that one off the needles, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it's all garter stitch. There's no real challenge, and maybe that's why I enjoyed it so much. It's because I could just close my mind and self-heal without too much hard work. As I said, I think last episode, there's a lot to be said for quietly knitting away on garter in order to bring one's centre back. So there we go. I highly recommend it for that purpose alone. As a shawl, I haven't done a DK weight shawl in a long time, so this should be a good transition in terms of weather as well. And if I wanted something really cosy around my neck on a cold winter's day, I think that would look rather nice too in the neck of my coat. So very happy with the choice on that. Shame that I had to buy the extra ball of yarn, but hey ho, if I stuck to the pattern I definitely wouldn't. So the quantities in the pattern would be exact and in fact generous, because as I say, I had that ball left. There's more than half a ball left there, so it's more than 50 metres left. And there we go, a finished object. I'm not sure when, did I have a finished object last time? I feel like because the last 3 weeks have been a bit of a blur, and because I've cast on so much, I feel like I haven't actually done very much productive work. I'm sure I have. I'm sure I'm just fooling myself. I'll just have some of this now going very cold coffee that Mr. Beebe made for me. Here we go. So socks. Let us talk about socks. Here we go. This is a finished pair. Ends sewn in and everything. So let me remove that one. Very pleased. It's a Drops Farble. I think I've got the leftovers here. I'm stretching over and coming off screen just slightly. I do apologise, but everything's on my trolley and I'm just going to plough my way through it. So it just means a bit of a stretch. There we go. This is the Drops Farble. Can't say any more than that about it, really. I had that much left of the one ball I've used, so I have another full ball plus that, which is just as well, because Mr. BB wants the exact same pair of socks. His feet are only slightly longer than mine, but he wants a longer leg. He likes his socks about there. So one ball will still do him, because I've got enough there for the extra length in the foot. And this much again, effectively, to go up the leg. So he will be very happy with that. And I've got loads of the heels, toes and cuffs. I don't know why my brain can't come out with that one. I have to actually say that out loud in my head. I have to say that quietly in my head and before I say it out loud. It's like a tongue twister for me. Very happy with it. This one, just working on my learned knowledge, fits perfect. It's absolute perfect fit. The length, the depth. I have a strong suspicion that my tension has relaxed with socks now to the point where it's gone back to my more natural tension. For some reason, and I do not understand why, I seem to be able to get tension on almost anything that I knit. If anything that's slightly loose, and which is almost impossible to achieve because every designer's tension is individual to their own knitting. But I just seem to be able to do it, and I don't know why. So because I have now relaxed into the construction of sock knitting and the process is sort of embedded in the brain, my tension has become more relaxed, and therefore the fit is less constricting from the get-go. I usually have to wear them in a bit. So yeah, really happy. Sock 1, sock 2, and ends are woven in, and they will go to the box of socks Cal for Yarngasm, which means that they will sit in the box now until the winter, because we don't want to wear woolly socks in this weather, do we? Or if we do, we're living somewhere cold. So stick that over there. Sock number 2, which was the putting in the heel, afterthought heel, my chosen heel being the hat heel. Now, if you remember this one, I felt that because I had to reverse the instruction, the hat heel pattern came from a different sock, which you knit this first, add your gussets to it, and then go either end. I used the pattern in reverse so that I came up to the cast off point. And as you can see, Hannah, you'll know what I'm going to say now. And I'm not even going to say it, Hannah. I just want to implant that image in your brain so that forevermore you will look at the heel of your sock and remember that view. Right, and on. The second sock, I have the tube, and I like this yarn so much. It reminds me of old English roses. I've no idea why, but there's kind of just a general feel and nostalgia about it. Wartime garments, maybe. There's just something about that colour range, nice and washed out, sepia-like almost. So I wanted to use up every scrap of it, which is why I chose to do the top toe up on this ball. And indeed I have. I think I have a tiny little nugget of yarn left. Let's have a look in the box. Yes, I have that tiny little nugget left. There we go. That's off one sock. I wanted to stop it exactly at the same point because it is a perfect start. That's about 10 stitches measurement. Totally worked, and I pretty much have got matchy matchies all the way. I didn't sit and count each row, that would be ludicrous, but pretty much a complete match. Given the sort of vagaries, is that a word? I don't know if that's a word or not, but you know what I mean. Of striping wool, in which some lines, because it slightly might be off position, you might create an extra line or two. I think pretty darn good. And as I say, that's what's left. Possibly enough for a mini. Although why I want a mini, I have no idea. I don't do minis so much. And that, if you remember, is the other colour, which I will do the same thing on. So going back to the hat heel shape, what I plan to do now is put the cuff on and get it off the needles and find my row point on here and put my hat heel in, but make some modifications on it. And if it works, I will go back and take away that heel and redo it. That's the plan. There is no hurry. Socks will happen. So that would be sock 10 and 11, and then my technically last sock for the year, which I'm sure I'll do more of. Mr. BB's already put an order in, and you know, you just look at a ball of yarn and go, oh, that's a sock, I want that. But technically the 12th sock of the year is this one, if you remember this little chap. I haven't got much to say about it. That's one foot, still waiting for the leg, and the other foot I have started and moved up. I think I showed you a tiny little nugget in the base of the heel, but I am now moving on up the foot, and I have the heel. I do like this heel, and it does fit a dream when you do follow the pattern properly and don't substitute. Isn't that lovely? And it's a perfect fit. It's so comfy. As I say, I'm reserving complete recommendation until I have put together a whole sock, because I'm still not entirely convinced on that dimension here to here. I don't know why. There's just something saying, is that actually going to fit all feet? Mr. BB's arch is much higher than mine, and although he's slightly shorter, he'll be able to get the sock on, and he will be able to tell me whether, once you've taken up your heel in there, whether that dimension there is too tight. That's still what's holding me back from 100% recommendation. It's a free pattern. You can find it on nitty.com. I don't actually have the pattern print with me at the moment, I don't believe. But if you look on a previous episode, you'll see what it is. Of course, if I did show notes, you'd just do that, wouldn't you? But I don't do those. My life is crammed enough as it is, so I make no apology for it. But I am sorry, she says. So there we go. That's sock number 12/3. And that's the stage they're at. So that's the socks. What else should we talk about? Honestly, if you looked at this stuff around here, I just almost don't know where to start. I don't think there's anything else finished. Everything else from now on is either a continuation of work or a cast on. So I'm going to pick this first one up at my feet, which is the cardigan, which won't take long to talk about. Although I've got quite far with it, I had a flurry of this before I had to go on my trip, and I couldn't take it into the car because although I've sort of memorised the lace pattern, I wasn't 100% confident, and I can't read in the car. It makes me sick. In fact, going there, Mr. BB's driving was slightly tense, and so he took corners a little bit whippy, and knitting started to make me feel a bit sick. So going there for the first 8-hour journey, I didn't hardly do any knitting, but coming back he was more relaxed and the tension was gone, so the drive was less troublesome. However, going back to the cardigan, the first garment that I've done for years and years and years, we are getting, oh, look at the colour in that. And it's not quite as vibrant as that, but nonetheless, it gives you a good idea of what it would look like wearing it on a sunny day. That's interesting. It's not as bright as that, but nonetheless. So we have a top of a cardigan. I jumped around in the pattern instruction a bit and I put my sleeves on. That comes later in the pattern instruction, but I could see no reason why I couldn't. And because I was wanting to pretty much use this yarn through, A, to see how much more I needed, and B, because I just wanted to move away from the yarn, because the lace part's a different yarn. I put the sleeve tops on as well. So 1 and 2. I tried to match the pattern, but this was the add-on. This was a continuation, and this was an add-on. As you can see, I've got different coloured sleeves, but that doesn't really matter, does it? I don't think it matters. You move your arms around, no one's not going to see that. Anyway, and then I went back to the body section, because doing the longer lengths of lace is going to implant the pattern much more quickly. And the yarn for the top half, quick recap on that for you. Don't know whether I've got the label. Maybe I won't recap on that for you. Oh yes, I can. Here we go. It's a Regia lace, 71% wool, 29% polyamide. And the polyamide, if you remember, was a very fine black thread which wrapped itself around the wool, which gave it the boucle finish, which I quite like. Wasn't expecting, and once it happened, I like, but would not work for lace, so I picked something else for the lace. The colour here is 06575, and you get 100 grams gives you 600 metres, so you get a nice lot of yarn. I did have to go into my second ball to finish, because when I did the sleeves, that was fine, and the reason why that slightly changed is because I was knitting off the other end of the ball. And I thought, oh, I won't need a second ball, but I did, because when I went back to the body, I had to knit, I don't know how well you're going to see it, I had to do this section here, and I didn't have enough, so I very, very slightly dipped into this. But as it turns out, that's fine, because the collar on the top half of the cardigan is also in that yarn. I could contrast it, but I don't think I'm going to. So that's fine. I've gone into a second ball. I'll have loads of it left. I don't know what I'll do with it. And so the lace choice, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. I do love this yarn. I'm using it in something else as well, which I'll show you in a minute. It's the alpaca silk lace from Artisano. Yes, that's right. It's the cherry red, which is colour 485, and I'm stretching the limits of my reading here. These glasses aren't the strongest ones, and so I'm aware I'm tromboning to focus. So we've got 400 metres in a 50-gram ball of wool. Does that make sense? Yeah, that sounds very nice. Oh, and it is just delicious. This is the second one. I need 2 because the pattern calls for 600 and something, I think. Oh, and it really is as luscious and edible, cherries, yum, as that. It almost makes you want to think, if I smell that, will I smell cherries? That's the one I'm using, and that's the second one. No, there's no cherry smell there. I don't know why I'm doing that. And so we come to the lace, which not an awful lot done. You can just see the pattern forming here. So when it's blocked, you will get better stitch definition, which is why I picked over and above this. Now, as a viewer, you're probably looking at it and thinking, well, I can't really see any difference. But in real life, you can see the difference, and you would need a much smoother yarn than this one in order to get full impact on that lace. I'm sure when I get further down you will see more clearly the reason why I changed the yarn. So there we go, that's the cardigan, the garment. little progress, not masses. What should we talk about next? Let's just pluck something off the top, shall we? What's in this bag? This did have the socks, didn't it? What's in here? Ah, okay. This one, I had a Instagram message from Laurie, who is Into It Knit. If you're watching, hello, my love. You recommended a pattern, and I showed Mr. Beebe, and he thought it was stunning. He absolutely adored it. Now, I don't think, I'm fairly sure, I haven't printed the top page of the pattern, because the top page of the pattern is the most stunning picture, and it would have used a lot of ink. Oh, I didn't print it. But I can show you that much of it, which is the lace edging. And this is a fully beaded shawl all through. And the minute I saw it, I knew I had the perfect yarn. I haven't told you the name of the pattern, but if I can remember, I will put it on the bottom. And the reason I haven't told you the name of the pattern is because it's not printed on the pattern sheets. That would have been on the front page. Oh, there it is. Dancing Butterflies. And that's probably Carfield MA. I think it was free. I think it's a free pattern. Anyway, let me show you what small amount I've done. This wasn't part of the castanitis session. This was pre-castanitis. And so at the point of casting this on, I didn't really have an awful lot left on my needles apart from the socks and the cardigan. And because Mr. Beebe's reaction was so, whoa, put that on, he'll like that. And the fibre I had was something I picked up on Bristol Fibre Festival, which they're not doing this year because the site that they normally go to has reduced the space that they're allowed, and they find they can't put on a show big enough. So that won't happen this year, which is a bit of a shame because A, it was the first one I ever went to, and B, it would be the only one I will go to this year, and I'm not even going to be able to go to that one. So there we go, never mind. And so the yarn I found was a small fibre artist called Natalie Stewart, hand-dyed yarn, fibre and textile. She has a website across the bottom there. And this is a silk yarn, which is 800 metres in 102 grams. It's quite expensive, but the minute I saw it, I fell in love with the yarn. Mr. Beebe fell in love with a pattern, and the two have met. That is gorgeous. And the silk gives it that beautiful sheen, not a huge amount of stretch, so the size of the shawl I get will be the size of the shawl I keep. But because there's no stretch in it, and because that shawl is fully beaded, there won't be any distortion from the weight of the beads because I'm using glass beads. And I have done a little bit of it, and this again has gone a little bit by the wayside because of my castanitis. It is also because it is fully beaded, you have to carry the beads around with you a lot, and so I have to be in a physically good place to do that, and a mentally good place because it's quite complicated, if I'm honest. It took me a little while, it took me 2 attempts to cast it on because there was a little ambiguity in the pattern description at the beginning, but I read charts, and so I followed the chart, and once I sort of saw what was happening, away we went. And so, yeah, what can I show you of it? Not a lot. You can just see the beads starting to come through. It's a top down to the bottom shawl. The silk is going to make it quite an extravagant piece. It's quite a large shawl because the cast on tab is that long. Now normally you get 7, sometimes even 3 stitch and then build up around there. This one has that longer top line cast on, and then you'll build off the sides. Now that, if I have the main picture to show you would be because you then form the wings, which have a lovely drape. The beads that I have chosen are my favourites, Debbie Abrahams. That's the size and colour. And that's a full packet, second packet too, because it takes a lot of beads. Very glossy, very smooth, very uniform beads, these. Almost 100% reliable. You can get one or two rogues in there, but there's about 500 beads there, and I might find one that just doesn't sit with the rest. And I might find none. So always good buy hers. And her website, well, just Google Debbie Abraham and it says Bead Club. Don't be fooled by that. You don't have to join a club. And so there we go. That is the beautiful dancing butterflies. Thank you, Laurie. You had a good pick there. And I am hovering in the background with that. As I say, beading, all my patterns have an element of difficulty to them, and that certainly does. And at the same time as that, I was sent a pattern by somebody delightful who will remain nameless, but we know who you are. And I Instagrammed this pattern. I don't have a copy of it because it sits on my iPad, which I'm using to film, so I can't even share it with you in mechanical form. And again, if I remember, I will put it up on the bottom of the screen. It is Art Deco, I believe is the shawl. The minute you put that into Ravelry and search for it, it'll come up and you'll recognise it instantly. It is a paid for pattern. And it is intarsia with short row. Well, no, actually it's not intarsia, it's just short rows, but it gives the effect of intarsia. Show you what I'm doing with it. We had great debate, she and I, on yarn choices. It's a lace weight. It's just beautiful. And I'll show you the back so you get a nice effect of what's going on. Look how neat the back is as well. Bring it a bit closer. So there's lots of short rows, which are quite difficult to pick up. Now it's obviously only going to show its full glory through blocking, because obviously the short rows give that kind of wrinkly effect until blocking is done. But you can clearly see that blocking is going to ping it. And so we have the deco effect, which runs as a band across the top, and then you have a border along the bottom. It's a stole style, not a triangle or a crescent. It is so, when you knit it, it is so pleasure giving in terms of, have I really made this? And yet when you're knitting it, as long as you don't lose your place in the pattern, it is a sheer joy. The yarn that I have picked, I can't remember. The yarn that I have picked, I'm a bit erratic today, aren't I? I do apologise. That I will apologise for. Is John Arbon, is the main two colours. So the purple lower colour has no name. You get 490 metres in 100 gram skein, and it is Exmoor Blueface and Blueface Leicester, 70/30. It's not scratchy, but it's not super soft. I mean, interestingly, it feels different knit up to the ball. I would need to soak it for perfection, but I could still possibly wear it. The jury's out on that one, I'm afraid. The other colour, which is the more taupe colour, which I'm putting across the top, is, again, no name. Oh, hang on. Ha ha ha! Shade Stone Grey. And this one is Plum. So plum and stone grey are plum and stone grey. And then my flowers, leaves rather, although the way the colours are changing, you'd think they were flower petals, wouldn't you? Is a glorious Lang Yarwhal Magic Degrade. There you go. And that colour is 85.0019. 100 grams gives you 400 metres. And here is that luscious ball of loveliness. This is actually softer than the John Arbon. Has a slightly silkier feel to it. The mix, I believe it's just wool and polyamide. Yeah, it's 75% wool, 25% polyamide. And you can see the colour change in there. Grey, pinks, sort of a gingery colour, cream. Just enough. I didn't want to be blown out by it. And I wanted it to have a pretty effect, which I believe it will as this moves forward. I might, I haven't decided yet, but I might skip some of the grey. Even though I've kept some in, you don't get a full contrast, but we're about to enter all these lovely golds and creams, so we'll see what happens. So I looked for more of a tonal blend rather than a strong contrast. However, because actually the pattern is almost hypnotically good to do, I might go for a black and white with the obvious one is red because that's very deco, but I might look at a real vivid contrast, or even black with white. I don't know, there's just something about it. Or I might get to the end and think I'm never doing that again which is probably the more likely, if I'm really honest, because so many other lovely things come along, don't they? But this was a gift and received with huge gratefulness. I'm very touched by it. Thank you so much. And I am enjoying it. I haven't done it for a little while because cast and ice has set in, but because I have done one full pattern repeat, it's quite easy to pick it up and carry on. So if you stop after each repeat, and then you have no problems about picking it up and finding out where you were last. So that's, what's that, another shawl. You can see a theme, I think. What else? This one. I don't think there's much to say about this bag. I believe this is the Julep beaded shawl. I haven't touched it at all. This may go into hibernation. It took me so long to cast it on because I picked it about 1.5 years ago. Kept the yarn, everything. Didn't cast on immediately at that point because I didn't have the right needle size. So it sat there for ages, and then I unearthed it when I was tidying up my butterfly house, not last time, the time before, and happened to have the needles spare, so I cast it on, and now it seems to be languishing again. So it seems to be fated to take some time. However, I will persevere with it, hopefully, and not frog it. Right, next bag is this one, and this is my designing on the hoof with my own spun fibre, if you remember. Let's have a look and see where that's going. That was the Django fibre, as we now know it as. Smells like llamas, alpacas, even. So soft. I'm really looking forward to this. Hopefully it'll fit. Now, if it doesn't fit me, I know it will fit my daughter, and I know she will wear it. So I don't really have an issue with sizing on this one. I have this much left of the main ball. That was the little extra nugget, if you remember. And I wanted to get at the back using the nugget and this because of the slight difference in thickness in spin. That one came as a sort of a tail end Charlie when I was plying up leftovers from 2 spins, and so the weight has a bit of a thick and thin. It's more obviously thick and thin than this, so I was alternating the balls to lose it in its massive knitting, which Seems to have been quite effective. And the aim was to get up the back before that ran out, working on the theory then that I shouldn't run out of yarn to finish. So I can't repeat this yarn, obviously, and that will be a shame. So where am I at? I've obviously got up the back, and I've started to come up. Did you know? Sorry, my hair knows that. Obviously started to come up one side, and so it will sit there. I have lots of pins in there marking my increases, and I am writing it as I go. You should be able to see the texture of the moss stitch as it runs down the armband and across the back of the neck, over the shoulder and down the front. If I turn it inside out, you might be able to see that more clearly. And I am increasing down that line there, not on the edge, so that these same 6 stitches carry on without interruption. It just gives it a smoother panel on the front, if you can see that. So again, it's one of those, because I'm designing it as I go, and design is a generous word for it, I can kind of knit it watching the telly, really, to be honest, especially when I was doing the back. And because it's alpaca and very, very loose, it's going to stretch, so I have allowed for that, because I don't want it to be down by my ankles. What I will probably find is I have enough yarn left over to have made it an inch or 2 longer, but hey ho, we can live with that. The front panels are going to be longer than the back by their shaping. So that's coming on. I haven't done it for a little while, but there we go. One of us is going to enjoy wearing that. If not me, then my daughter. And it is living in my bag, that what I made myself. There we go. Shove it back in. It's wearing quite well. I was interested to, I'm treating it quite harshly now because I want to see how the interfacing wears. I would suggest that it's not the best choice of interfacing, which is why I didn't proceed with it in other bags. But nonetheless, it's starting to get that sort of comfy, cosy look, that lived-in look that we all know and love, which suits the fabric, of course. But you probably aren't picking it up on the camera. There's a little bit of puckering there, that as it doesn't wear so well, and some parts are softer than others. See, the bottom's quite crumpled, but I still like it. I'm still happy with it. There we go. What else is worth looking at on here? There's a bag there. This one has yarn ready, but I have resisted the urge to cast on. Actually, I think that might be it. The rest is various bits of storage. So that's the trolley. I have cast on, wasn't going to, but I did. I have cast on the 3rd shawl in the Shawl Society, which is the Asana shawl. I don't have a picture of it. I've just yesterday printed out the instructions. Oh, what's that on the back? Maybe that's a picture. Quick look. Maybe I printed one out especially for you guys because I don't need the picture. Ah, I did. There we go. Asana shawl. I wasn't going to do this, and then the pattern came out, and because I still had the tail ends of castanitis, I cast it on, didn't I? But it is a pretty shawl. Lots of beading in there. All through there is beading, which of course I'll do. Garter stitch top, as you can see. I'm not giving anything away with that. It's quite obvious. That is beautiful though, and I had the perfect yarn, which is one of the reasons that tipped me over the edge. It is a Countess of Lace yarn. I have had this for ages. I bought it in a sale, I think. I certainly didn't pay the ticket price for it. Not that I wouldn't, but I didn't. And this is Nightmare Lord Kitchener lace. 55% Blueface Leicester, 45% Mulberry Silk, and there are 800 metres in this 100-gram ball. You all know Countess of Lace. I'm not going to show you that little scrap of tie-up fibre because you need to see it en masse. There's a big bag of beads in the bottom of that bag. Here is the gorgeousness of it. Gorgeous. Peacock. I would call that peacock green. Iridescence on that because of the mulberry silk. And it's soft as soft can be. It really, really is that. What you see is what I'm feeling. See how my fingers dig. Bing. And I believe I am 15%. I've done that over a couple of nights because it's just garter stitch, isn't it? But the increasing is a nice tidy increase. I've stuck to her complete instructions this time because I wanted to have the larger lace looking increase. If you remember, I was knitting through the back. You can't strictly do that with this particular increase anyway. But isn't that knitting up beautifully? It's a little darker than what you're seeing. Let's come back a bit. Yeah, that's about it there. Beautiful. And the beads I finally plumped for, partly because I have tons. They're not Debbie Abraham's, believe it or not, but they're very, very much like hers, are these. If I put that on the background of that, you will sort of see why I've gone for it. So in that colour grouping in those beads is the colour of the shawl, but equally there's golds and pinks, purples, so like a peacock. And there are a lot of beads in the lace patterning, so that's going to shimmer and shimmy a lot. One thing I did notice about this yarn though, I'm hoping, yeah, you see, if you look you can see it, there is a couple of white patches here and there, obviously where it's slightly tighter. Now on the end it doesn't matter, but it gives a good example of, I'm hoping they won't be too obvious in the knit. Just a couple. There's one there and there. We'll see. I could always get a colouring pencil out, couldn't I? So that's the Asana shawl cast on. I have been doing that more recently than most things that I have at my feet, simply because at this point in time it's really easy to do. I may find when I reach the lace section I won't be quite so avid because of all the beads to add in. We'll see. That's that one. Next castanitis. I'll show you this one. This is Mr. Beebe's birthday present. So if you're watching, go away. Turn it off, fast forward, whatever. I wanted to make him a sweater for his work. He works in a private school teaching music, and they have to dress quite, I'm not going to say smart, smarter than he normally is, I've got to say. He's very much a Joe Brown type of guy. So pattern shirts are out at that school, so he wears his obligatory blue stripe or small check shirt, and I think he stopped wearing a tie now, but he does wear jumpers. But I thought it'd be quite nice to do him a sleeveless jumper. So anyway, without preamble, I've gone for a 1930s pattern. This is a vintage pattern that you can buy, and they give you obviously a modern copy of it. And I had done one of these once before and really enjoyed it. I haven't done colour work for ages, not at this intensity, but I'm loving it. So the yarn I've picked, because it's going to take a lot of wear and will probably be in and out of the wash a lot, I have gone for the recommendation that the vintage pattern recommended, and it's still being made, not in exactly the same colours, although one of the colours was there. Strangely I didn't pick it because I didn't want it. It was grey, cloud, silver cloud or cloud grey or something like that, and I didn't want grey. And it's Sirdar Country Style wool blend 4-ply, and they still make it. So that is my main colour, because his colour palette suits him with greens and browns and beiges. That's his colouring. So I've changed the grey for this. It's getting a bit blown out there. I might just about get it. This sort of neutral beige. And then my Fair Isle patterning is, be careful I pick this up because it's in mid, is a paler cream, a brown, a burgundy red and a green. So that's the Fair Isle pattern choices. And I have got, I'm knitting it on proper needles because it's knit flat. I was going to convert it into the round, but I felt, again, because of, it'll be on and off and on and off and in and out the washing machine, I felt having the seaming structure would help retain its body shape, because it is quite tubular in its cut, its style. That would have a tendency to either twist or elongate. So I wanted to minimise that possibility, and so I've kept it as two pieces stitched together. So there'll be seams. That's what I'm trying to say. La la. And I've got that far. Not very far at all. My floats on the back. These ones are very long, so I picked up and anchored them a little. I might tighten them up a little because it's the very first line. I can just backtrack and pull them slightly tighter. But the main body of Fair Isle seems to be holding out quite nicely. The instruction on it is interesting actually, because it's off. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I had to buy it to find this out. However, where they put the pattern repeat, it's not central to the repeat, so you catching up a little bit of one end to add on to the other, if that makes sense, and then you re-add it on the end on your last repeat. And so mentally, the way I work colour work in my head is to form patterns to count. So I might, on these colour stitches, for instance, on this line, I have a 3, a 1, a 2, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. And that's what I count in my head in order to not have to follow the pattern once I've picked up that count. But because it's slightly off, when I want to double check that I'm running right, and I did tink back this row I've just done, completely unnecessarily, as it turned out, because the 3 is split either end of the repeat, and so when you go back and check, I looked at it and thought, but there aren't any blocks of 3 in that colour, I must be doing it wrong. So I tinked back, fortunately I'd only got about that far, and started it again, only to see that there were still 3 stitches, and then I realised what I'd done. Poo. Anyway, I'll carry on with that, in and out. His birthday is the 27th of September. I should get that done. Great big long ribbing, which on a 1x1 rib, 4-ply, on 3 1/4 in the body. It was 2 3/4, 2.75mm needles. That took a jolly long time. There we go. Very pleased that I have picked it. I had discussed it with him ages ago actually, and he didn't seem that keen. However, I've completely ignored that. And he's having a jumper. It's not that he doesn't want a jumper, as he wasn't sure about having that style of jumper. I don't know whether I like Fair Isle. Well, you're having one. There we go. What's in this bag? Oh yes, okay, this is the crochet bags that I was doing. I've got quite far with this one. I am now ready to do the last 2 skeins up. What I've decided to do with this one, because I know that I haven't got enough to come up high enough and do a front flap, what I've decided to do, go with me with this, shut your eyes, imagine, I'm going to go up as high as I would have wanted for the flap, and then across the middle I am going to continue to crochet a single strapped band rather than the full width. And then I'm lining it. I have a beautiful, in my fabric store over there, I have a really lovely vintage linen. It's quite heavy, so it has the effect of sacking, but really high quality. So there's some weight to it, there's some structure to it, and there's a nice clearly defined weave, but it still has some fluidity and visual. The aesthetic is quite expensive. I don't know what it was originally. It's something from something, and I can't remember where I picked it up from. I'm trying to find it now. I would have brought it over, but I can't actually see it in there. I think that might be it down there. So my plan is to use that as the lining, and then to stiffen the top, make it double thick, and make the flap from it as well, with this bar running down the middle with a fastener on the front. And then the strap or handles, depending on what I opt for, will be made from the linen, stiffened. So that's where that one's going. It's coming along nicely. Because it's a single crochet, it does take a little while, and because I'm basket weaving it, stitching it, which is to do half the top chain and then a full and a half and a full and then alternate. We talked about that last time. It takes a little bit more effort because you can't, I've got to watch what I'm doing. However, I am enjoying it, and it's a beautifully soft fibre. And equally so am I enjoying this one, which I haven't done an awful lot of, because every time I touch this and pick it up, I keep coming up with new things I want to do with it, and I'm trying to restrain myself a little by putting it away and stopping the sort of the airy-fairy thoughts from running away with me. Otherwise I'll never get it done. So I popped that one away for a while. But it is looking very pretty. It's still quite soft and floppy because I haven't done any of the weaving. However, my plans, my thoughts and plans for this thus far are pretty much where we discussed before, with a little bit of weaving to give structure to the body of the bag. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to top crochet some stems, and then I'm going to add some little flowers just across the front, make it quite pretty. As to the handles and the top, etc., I haven't gone very anywhere with that. And the reason why, they're going to be bags to start with, and I'm going to feature them on my stall towards the latter part of the year, because I think they're quite wintry. But if they don't sell, I want to be able to convert them into project bags, which you'll probably think is quite mad, but I'll keep talking about that in a minute. So what I do, I want to be able to say, well, actually, you can use this as a project bag, because they'll have fabric lining, so there won't be any friction against knitting. There will be, the outer part will be this lovely woolliness. Because why not put your knitted work in a knitted bag, is my opinion. Why not? And I mean, I would just sit and hug my bag all day. Probably wouldn't ever knit. Perhaps that's not a good selling point. So that's two narrowly pootling along. I just noticed something in the bottom of here, which I'll just throw into the conversation, just in terms of, and here's another cast on, is a simple start to the cover for a wreath, polystyrene wreath that I do at Christmas wreaths, that's what I'm trying to say. So that's came out and got started. Because I know I started that because I bought myself a new crochet hook. And I bought it by accident because it isn't actually the one I wanted. I was trying to replace what I normally use, which is the Addy something or the other. And they're the shaped handles. And they didn't have the size I wanted in stock. So I was thinking, poo. I'll just try that. And it was the cheapest one on the list because I don't know it, I didn't want to spend lots of money. And I think I paid about £3, £3. But actually it's quite good. The handle is very good. The shape of the head is different to my normal. I normally have a much more pointed one. So I am trying, it is a little bit more, I have to be more conscious of how I wiggle into the stitch. It's not as smooth, but it's quite clean to do. It's a much flatter head. Where it catches here, that's much flatter than I'm used to, and the general shape is quite bullet shaped. What I'm normally used to a bullet shape, this is quite blunt. And so what's happening is I'm having to wiggle, wiggle, wiggle like that in order to be sure that I've gone in the right place that I want to be. And when it catches, it's not a smooth catch. Now that could largely be because I'm just not used to that shape of head. The handle is nice and easy to hold. There's enough cushion in there. But I'm not totally sold on the head of the hook, which is fine. You know, I paid £3 for it. What do you expect? Put that away. That was a cast on moment that I thought, I don't know what to do with myself. And then we come to the last thing I'm going to show you in terms of yarniness. And this was at the beginning of my cast on session, and I needed this like a hole in the head, but I needed something comfortable and new and totally do it with my eyes shut, because I don't, you know, let's shut what's going on out. So I bought a kit, a crochet blanket kit. I don't need it. And the finished item, I have no idea what I'll do with it. It's all about process for me and what doing it and making it gives to me, not having the blanket at the end of the day. So I bought Janie Crow's Mystical Lanterns crochet blanket. It's very pretty. And it wasn't too expensive. And it came pattern and yarn complete. The only thing you don't get is the hook. Janie Crow, I've got a couple of things hovering around of hers. She's very exacting on her gauge size of her pieces, and so I called a halt to one of the ones that I was doing because her gauge, I couldn't quite reach it. She must be a really, really loose crocheter, because everything, and I thought I was too, but everything I was doing was coming out just a fraction too small, and so I stopped doing that particular one. And actually, it doesn't really matter. So it's a slightly smaller blanket. So what? Anyway, so it came quite quickly. Who did I order it from? I ordered it from Black Sheep. Can't remember. And it came really quickly, and I cracked into it straight away because there was the need. That's why I did it that way, and I made one strip. And I haven't done any since. But the interest is still there, because I want to see how they all fit together, join in. I think what made me stop, and what it wasn't giving me, I was still having to put a lot of thought into it, because what the pattern doesn't give you, and this isn't a complaint per se, but it's because it got in the way of what I needed, which was complete mindless work. It doesn't tell you what colours to use. It suggests you put them all in a bag and pull them out sort of randomly, and as you use one you put it in a different bag, and then you cycle it around like that. And I'm afraid my OCDs don't let me do that. I like to either be told that, or to lay it out in front of me and decide that. And obviously I had to do the second one, and that meant I had to put a certain level of decision and thought into it, and that wasn't what I wanted it for. So I did, and the process is nice, and I was getting gauge, and So I will go back to it, but because I don't know what I'm going to do with it, it kind of, I don't know, that would be a winter, have to go into the winter project. However, I guess you could argue that it's the sort of the alternative cozy memories blanket thing, couldn't you? Although there's no memories involved in it. The only one there is involved in it I'd rather not have. So there we go. That is, show you the contents of the basket. There are the colours. It's only a Stylecraft wool mix, not very high wool, which in terms of, in my experience of blankets, I've made quite a few, the less wool you have in it the better. A good quality acrylic, and I would highly recommend Stylecraft for that, is essential. You don't want squeaky yarn, but because of the size of it and because of the way I particularly use our household runs and the blankets are used, they do need to go in the washing machine, and the only difference that happens when they come out is they're clean. They're still plump, they're still vibrant, they still look like the way you made them. There's no pilling or anything like that. So yeah, if you're using a blanket, if you're making a blanket to use, acrylic or acrylic mix. If you're making a blanket to look at, a wall hanging or something that never gets much trafficking, then wool. There we go. And that just sits in its huge great basket in my living room, glaring at me. So that was that one, and I think that's pretty much all the yarniness that I have to show you. We'll move on to something completely different, and that's some sewing. I talked about the crochet baskets that I did for the stall. This is for Sunday, which is tomorrow in my time, and I'd got as far as the needing to line them, and so yesterday I cracked open the sewing machine, spoke to it nicely and said, please, please, please be kind. And it was, and quite remarkably, touch wood, so far so good. So I'll show you. This was the bag with the big button that was going to have a nice simple lining to it, if I could do it, and I think that I have. It's got to be actually attached to the basket, which I'll do this afternoon, so it's hand sewing. However, and the base still has to be fixed to the lining. We have a light bag. It has a big back pocket which has been seamed down the centre, so you can, I don't know, your phone, whatever, bits and bobs. As I say, the bottom has to be seamed in. I'll do that by hand as well. And then I will stitch it to the top edge of the basket. There's a little label in there with the beady butterfly, which is actually a loop, which you could, there we go, stick my finger through it. You could use a hook, or you could put pencil, pens in there, whatever. Depends on how you use your bag, really. But it's just a summer bag. I've decided that the handles are fine. What I will do when I attach them, which as you can see they're still pinned on, I'm going to use wooden buttons to emphasise the connections. And then I very quickly made, using the same cotton thread that I used on the handle, I quickly crocheted up. I promise you this is what it is. It is a flower, it's a rose, and you roll it up, stitching as you go. It's quite fiddly to do, I must confess, but because you're stitching it as you go, it's not quite so bad. I'm trying to make sure I get it the right way around. There we go. You do it, when you've made it, you roll it up in the reverse so that the petals curl backwards. I think I've still got it wrong, but not to worry. Give you an idea of what it is. And what it happens is you have made yourself a great big fat English rose. I can do it without it falling apart. There you go. Great big fat English rose, which is all stitched, and it has a very large flat base here, which I would sew a pin on, and then it would pin on the front of the bag and then can actually be removed and used on the brooch. But it complements the big fat roses inside. Don't just sit on the front of the bag. So that's that one. That one hopefully will be done by tonight. And then the other one was a mega challenge, only because that's what I made it. It didn't have to be a mega challenge. It could have been exactly the same as that. But some weird reason in my head, I thought, no, I can't do it again. Let's do something slightly different. So I did. This one I'm sort of in two minds about. However, if you don't undo it, I love it. The difference, obviously, first of all, is the handles. I made very simple backwards, forwards, all the way up straps, which are then sewn on the inside so you can't effectively see the join. Then I wove ribbon through. You see pins there holding various things together. That's by just crocheting a slightly deeper band and then weaving through. I didn't leave spaces, so there's still stitching behind there. So they're not holes, they're just deeper stitches. And then I put in the lining, which at the top looks like that. It's obviously a zip. I've done zips before, so I wasn't too in awe of them. And you unzip, open sesame. The top panel is lined, and then I've just put a little label on the top there. So that was the first thing I had to remember to do, is to line the inside, otherwise you'd have seen the seaming where it's zip sewn in. And then the inside of the bag has a divider, slightly off centre, so one side is deeper than the other. It still has to be attached, and this is where I'm not 100% sure of the success of it. I think it's good enough, and I would certainly buy it, but from my own exacting standards, if you like, something just not quite there with it. However, what I plan to do, this is almost finished, I just need to, I'm hand stitching the top edge, so I just need to do that last line there. Then I plan to anchor the base of the lining to the base of the bag by invisible anchor points, probably on each there, and then on the, they're not exactly corners, are they, but the curved points there, just so that the lining doesn't shift around. I've tried it out by bunging a load of things in it just to see what happens, and what seems to be, this is why I am still sticking with it, is what happens is that the lining prevents the body of the bag from stretching too much, because of course the fabric doesn't stretch, so there's a more even distribution of weight on the handles, and it keeps it shaped really nicely, and it also just stays up like that. So that's still quite soft, but I've interfaced the lining with quite a firm interfacing so that it adds structure. And this is one of the things that I refer back to the crochet bags, is that I'm looking at, I would use that as a yarn project bag as well. I think it's quite funky. I plan to put possibly the roses on the front too, just to liven it up. I may not do that, but if it doesn't sell, then I will, just to make it more interesting. So there we go, that's just a little bits of hand sewing to finish off tomorrow. So that was quite fun. I'm in the throes of making one more, but I'm using the, I shook my camera really badly then, I apologise. I'm using recycled sari silk for this one, which is a pig to use, but the effect is lovely. It's much firmer as well. I will still line it, but I won't interface the lining on this one because this is quite firm. And it'll look very, very similar to that. Different handles. I might source some leather. This is more of a winter one as well. I might source some leather and make some leather straps for that. So I hope I don't jiggle your quite so much this time. Not back on there. And that is all the knitting and crochet. And now the last thing I'm going to show you to finish off is flavours of a craft that I started my whole journey with, and that's needle felting. I will go into it in more depth in terms of whys and hows and whats when I show you more of a feature of the sculpture pieces that I have done in the past. But I wanted to show you just these little bits because after I got over my castanitis, I sat with my daughter on the sofa, and within eye range was this, which is the first clean fibre from those 5 fleeces, and this has been washed, but it was waiting to be carded, and we were doing a bit of carding and making some fluffy rolags, which were looking really pretty, and the conversation drifted here, there and everywhere, and anyway we ended up talking about needle felting, and so she said, well, can I have a go? She's had a go before, and she won't take it up because she says it's too slow, and she tried to do it faster, and of course if you stick that needle in you, it blooming well hurts. So anyway, we had a go, and so I thought we could take the fleece back to its origins and make some sheep. I'd already made this little guy, which I put on Instagram. He is from Yarndale. He's the Yarndale sheep. I believe that they are collecting them, and it's a free pattern from Attic 24, and I quickly crocheted that up. He's stuffed with bat fleece. That's how we got, I think that's why the bag was out originally. This was part of the fidgety making stuff. And because these took a little bit more effort because they're made out of single, I split this yarn and took each of the colours out of it. And this of course comes off. The fibre that this is crocheted from is a Berger de France. Don't know, it's just a scrap I found. It's quite sweet though, isn't it? So I thought, let's take the yarn and go back to the sheep, so to speak. So on my trusty foam and my little pokey, I came up with this. Now, pardon the container that I keep it in, but it's rather fitting. Here we are. This is Shirley. Shirley the sheep has been born. And she can be shorn. So Shirley is shorn. She still needs some work, some defining shape-wise, but she's getting there. She's a little bit long. I mean, I don't needle felt anatomically correct. I needle felt because it's therapeutic, and if it turns out looking like something, that's great. So technically she could be anything from a dog to a horse to a cow to a sheep, but with a little bit more definition she'll be more sheep-like, and certainly when her coat is on she's definitely a sheep. You don't get many dogs looking like this, do you? Up she pops. There we go. And she's very, very, my son said, oh, it's just, you just want to hold it, don't you, and squeeze it. There's some great pleasure to be had from that, but she's also quite sweet to look at, quite funny. And so she has her coat, and just to show you the process that one goes through, this is one that, again, still having some shaping done. There's more shaping going on in the leg here. It's starting to get the kick in the lamb's legs. Put the tail on. The head has a more bovine shape to it. Those big cheeks that sheep have, as well as horses actually, but the nose is wrong for a horse. And the ears need to have some thinning at the base because the sheep's ears are much flatter like that. So she's coming on, but she's got no coat. And then this stage here really shows you more. You see, at the moment that's Beethoven, and then there's a sheep's bottom on the back, and we're getting some nice definition coming in the leg. And the tool is very simply that. A little wooden handle held in with a peg needle. You can buy different grades of needle. This is quite a thick one, and you can get much finer. This one here, you may or may not be able to see. Let's put my hand behind. It's a finer grade. So that this one here, that would be more for sculpting faces, real fine definition. This one, and you can get them thicker than this as well. This one is more for general body shaping. So I'm using this to bring up some of the shape in the leg. See, the problem with needle felting is once you start, you can't put it down. It's always a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. So if I kick really far into that point there, you start to kick back the little lambs, back leg, and then the front. So you have to start off quite large in order to get quite small. They're quite compressed, quite firm, because of putting the coat on and off. There's no point in having a floppy, flimsy. I mean, that's not going to fall apart, but it won't keep its shape forever. And then the aim, it isn't just an idle bit of needle felting. Sorry, I was just poking that up the sheep's bottom then. The aim will be getting onto back to this stage. What I plan to do, it'll be on the stall. I may sell them in my Etsy shop, I don't know. Certainly be on the stall. Shirley will come like that, and she will have, not this one, but she will have a costume or two. So that if you want to shear your Shirley, I'm sure that sounds quite rude. If you want to shear Shirley for the spring, she can then wear, and she just about squeezes into this one even though it wasn't made for her, she will then have a little spring outfit to wear, or themed, or maybe it's a bit long for her. Okay. And I will make a Christmas coat which will be red and white, obvious, and that will go on the stall as gifts. Now they won't be for children. I won't make anything for children. The safety laws on that don't bear thinking about, and I couldn't stand the idea of a child in any way suffering because of something I made. Not that they were. I'm not putting faces on. They will stay blank, just sculpted, but no eyes to peel off. I could needle felt in some darker colour, but I'm just leaving them blank. And that way your Shirley might be a Sean. It's up to you really. And I'll just sell them as little gifts. The ultimate fibre artist's executive toy really, isn't it? If you're feeling idle, you just dress your sheep. So there we go, Shirley and her little chum to come. And that is really everything that I've been working on. I haven't looked at a did you know point, so I can't finish on something even vaguely interesting. I hope you've found some of my wanderings and meanderings of interest, if not value. I don't know what I'd have done without my yarn this last 2 or 3 weeks. It's been very hard for Mr. Beebe, and I haven't actually alluded much to what the problem is because it's not my story to tell, but it has had impact on our home in some small ways. But the impact for me has been more about remembering and revisiting places which are sad. But on a positive side, finding my own understanding of where I'm at, and having some amazingly kind people that have come from doing the podcast and things like that. Without wishing to be too self-indulgent, I am grateful. And so I'm going to stop. I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going looking at this complete devastation. I will take a picture of it now that the filming has finished and tack it on the end of the film, just to show you exactly what I'm looking at. My view is not the same as your view. I promise you. It's far more interesting than what you're looking at right now. But yeah, have a good next 2 weeks, whatever, and I will see you soon. Hopefully a bit more buoyant, maybe with some finished items. That would be nice, wouldn't it? I very much suspect that not many of them will be finished. We'll see. In the meantime, enjoy your holidays if you have still holidays left, and if you're some parts of the country, of the world, you will be back to school and things like that, won't you? I hope that's all going well for you. Take care, be kind to yourselves. See you next time.